Today marks 1 year since the most diverse government in Israel's history was sworn in. And although many doubted it would survive to this point, Prime Minister Naftali Bennet's unruly, fragile coalition is hardly in a celebratory mood. With Parliament split evenly at 60-60 seats between the government and the opposition, the coalition can't afford any more defectors. And right now, it's dealing with at least 2 rebel lawmakers who could sink it. Bennett is negotiating with Uri Zaki from his own Yamina party, who has issued an ultimatum demanding more support for West Bank settlements as the price of his loyalty. On the other side of the ideological spectrum, Meretz Knesset member Rinawi-Zoabi has basically declared herself independent of the coalition's leadership as her party now seeks to expel her. With his government crumbling, Bennett today issued a plea for unity at today's cabinet meeting.
It seems to me that whoever is honest with himself will admit that this is the best government the country has had, which rests on one of the most difficult coalitions that the Knesset has known. This government pulled the country from paralysis to growth, from weakness to deterrence, from chaos to normality. This government cannot be stopped. It must continue to fight for the Israeli public. This government has done in 1 year what other governments have not done in a decade. We are not in despair, and we are not broken. We are simply not broken. We do not have the luxury of breaking because we do not have another country.
Well, joining us for more is Uri Zaki, chair of the executive board of the Bennetts Party and a founder for the Front of Protection of Democracy, speaking to us from Tel Aviv. And in studio with us, we have Michael Kleiner. He is president of the Likud Party Supreme Court and a former parliament member for the Likud. And Michael, I'll give you the first right of response to Prime Minister Bennett. This government passed the budget. It passed reforms. It has some achievements to its credit, and he says it deserves to go on.
Didn't it sound like an election speech? Because the question is not he will say what they did, and I am sure that Netanyahu could criticize the government, and some people criticize the government. We see the polls. According to the polls, the public doesn't think like Mr. Bennett. So either he failed in his deed, or he failed in bringing these wonderful deeds that he spoke about to the attention of the Israeli public. But the question is whether he can keep his government. He knows he can't. He knows that his days are numbered. You said that the opposition has 60 votes. So you need another additional member of Knesset to vote to bring down the government, or to call an early election. Right. Now, the complicated Israeli politics made the race very interesting, because that will determine the identity of this one member, who will be the 61 finger, will determine the identity of the prime minister, of the interim government, of the transitory government. If it will be Mr. Orbach, it will be Yair Lapid. And if it will be somebody of his bloc, like Maraune, which you mentioned, or from the United List, Mazem Ganaim, so then Bennett will be the transitory prime minister. So this is actually the fight. Orbach is asked to wait. He already told Bennett he cannot continue as this government. Bennett asked him to gain time. Maybe if he will delay his vote, then Rinawi-Zoabi or Ganaim will be first, and then Bennett will stay prime minister.
All right, well, let me go to you, Uri Zaki. First of all, does this government deserve to continue? Obviously, Michael Kleiner doesn't think so.
Not only does it deserve to continue, it must continue if one is interested in for the Israeli democracy to prevail. We hear the voices coming out of the Likud led by Netanyahu. Only today, a senior member of the Likud Party, David Amsalem, said, we're going to break the bones of the left in parliament. We're going to break the bones of the left in parliament once we go back to power. These are people who are defending someone who's facing a criminal trial right now, Mr. Netanyahu. Netanyahu lost
yes, which is going to be acquitted, as it seems.
Excuse me, Michael, I didn't.
Okay, sorry.
Is that different? Mr. Netanyahu lost any track of his past dignity towards the Israeli democratical institutions. Right now, what he seeks to do, much like President Trump in the United States, to just change the basic rules, all that's left of dignity within the Israeli democracy. And his comeback is extremely dangerous for the state of Israel. On the other hand, this government, as Prime Minister Naftali Bennet said, made unprecedented reforms, is also its structure. What Netanyahu, by the way, I'll say in parentheses, Netanyahu wanted to have the same United Arab List in his coalition. Someone else put a veto, the extreme rightist Smotrich. But this combination between right, left, and for the first time, an Arab participation in the Israeli government is of major importance.
Right.
This is the fulfilling of the Zionist dream.
Uri, I want to give Michael a chance, but I want you to briefly just answer one question. For that all to happen, your own party, Meretz, needs to put its house in order. Briefly, is it going to be able to do that?
We are working very hard. We have a problem with Ms. Rinawi-Zoabi. I hope she'll come to her senses. If she can't vote for, being in coalition, that means some compromises. If she can't vote, I hope that she will give back the power that was gained to her. She was not elected, unlike the United States, Israeli parliament members are elected by a party, not by the constituencies. She doesn't have any constituency she was elected by. It's the party that put her in the Knesset.
Right.
The party is unanimously supporting the continuation of this government, and therefore she needs to
I want to give Michael a chance to respond, but Michael, I want to just point out that even in the polls, the most recent polls, that showed a rise in the sort of, let's call it pro-Netanyahu bloc, it still was 60-60. It didn't show that even after everything you described, even if one accepts it, that the public is ready to return to a Likud-led government led by Benjamin Netanyahu.
If Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud bloc will get 60 or even 59 or if 58, it means that Benjamin Netanyahu will be the next prime minister of Israel and he will be able to choose his partners. The current opposition has now and had in the all four elections between 52 and 54 seats. Now it jumped up to 60. The current coalition was 61 or 62 when it was established. Today, the current coalition is 53 to 54 seats. It means that after the election, there cannot be a left-wing or center-left coalition because nobody will go with a joint list. So with the communists, with Auda and Tibi. So the only possibility will be either sixth election or a Netanyahu government, which we can take Yamina. By the way, in the press they put it in a very wrong way because Yamina never declared they will not join Likud. On the contrary, Yamina, Bennett-Shaked party, said they prefer Netanyahu government. They only went to this government because they had only 59. Right. Now they have together 66.
Right, but still the majority 66. Of voters chose parties that, and I'm counting the Arab voters too, parties that rejected Benjamin Netanyahu. It's still unclear if he's going to be able to form a government in the election, but we will have to leave it at that.
No, 75, because also the United List didn't disqualify Netanyahu.